It's honestly been a while since we've heard from the Gentle Bros with the release of Catquest in 2017 and Catquest 2 in 2019. One could have expected Catquest 3 to be launched much sooner, around 2021, following their track record and the mention of a continuation with the ending of Catquest 2. But given the time of the year and the troubles that plague the gaming industry, it's a bit more understanding as to why we haven't heard anything from them up until now in 2024. If you haven't played any of the Catquest games before, it's one of the best co-op games outside of the first, which is only single player, that you can play with a friend or a partner and have a fantastic casual time with on your adventures, hacking, slashing, and casting your way through levels, dungeons, and equipping yourself in any way that you see fit to do so. Maybe you would like to play support. You have plenty of possibilities like playing a healer or a shield support or a mixture of them all together. You might like experimenting with the fast options for DPS builds that stack off of your accessories to pull off real damage spikes when you execute combinations. The choices are virtually unlimited. Speaking of all three games, Catquest is undoubtedly their weakest title, but was also strong to the series of short yet delightful games. It felt more like a mobile game. The issue with this game was its progression for weapons and general equipment. It would give you random items that you had to gamble for at the blacksmith, which didn't seem all that exciting because the incentive to farm repetitively for the 50 gold to spam these boxes for a small percentage chance at a random weapon or armor that would then be leveled up to do more damage felt more like an unnecessary time sink and also kind of pointless. And also, saving up enough for the golden chest was a little overwhelming in price comparison, especially with the fact that they just kinda hand you the very powerful weapon before the main story's final act, which kinda makes them all obsolete. So you don't really feel the need or desire to explore when it's really just a single-player 1-hour adventure with optional content and a new game plus that adds in more challenge, which can take up another 14 or 16 hours to fully explore. With the release of Catquest 2, it didn't feel all that different in terms of playstyle, save from the addition of the option to play with a friend or a partner, which unfortunately no longer appears to work via remote play or even parsec. If you have the opportunity to play together as couch co-op, it's a much more exciting experience. Otherwise, playing solo with the invincible AI does make it a little less entertaining because it doesn't really provide much of a challenge. The removal of randomized equipment upgrades was fantastic, allowing you to truly choose the playstyle that suits you best. They also shifted the strongest weapon in the game as a final boss feature, which made all of the other weapons and builds not obsolete, which incentivized farming and exploration with side quests much more than the first game. You could still definitely ignore all of the side events and tackle the bosses and enemies at severely lower levels, and because each monster has a specific weakness, you can just abuse that to beat the game with perfect dodging without much of a concern. So if you're spamming the same playstyle over and over again, a lot of these enemies will become a lot more of a time sink to deal with, so you've got to be a little bit more diverse with your playstyle. It was still a fantastic sequel to the original game with numerous features that helped polish out many of the issues present with their first game, adding upwards to another 10 to 20 hours of fun and casual gameplay and exploration. I must say that despite the lengthy wait, Catquest 3 addressed all of the issues in the prior two games, including a ton of new content and features that really brought everything all together. Equipment was actually enjoyable and rewarding to craft and experiment with, as was magic and spellcasting, and also just leveling up. There was a much stronger sense of exploration than in the other games due to it having sea navigation, bounties, and locations actually being explorable places rather than the same linear dungeon paths with a few chests strewn about for random gear. The co-op gameplay is undoubtedly the most appealing aspect of this specific title. While the second game did a decent job at it, this one felt more fleshed out, more polished, and enjoyable to play with a friend as well as to go full solo. Because everything is tied to the host, progression would not be impeded because they could just return at any point in time to continue where you left off with new weapons and unlocks to mess around with. While each game has its ups and downs, each game has a vast list of side missions and dungeons to explore. It's entirely up to you whether you enjoy doing activities that don't contribute anything to the overall story or gameplay progression outside of giving you an extra few hours to explore, to gain bonus levels and stats, to deal with your enemies if you feel like you need that extra boost. It definitely feels really fun with Catquest 3, but it may feel like it's a bit pointless with the first game and also the second game if you're playing solo. With Catquest 1 and Catquest 2, there was something fundamentally missing, whether it was the functioning co-op or just the motivation to go through anything other than a few dungeons outside of the main quest or focusing on the enemy's weaknesses when it came to weapons. They both just felt a little too linear. But Catquest 3 excelled in being both interesting with excellent music and a redefined visual vibe, rather than being more of a top-down experience, especially with the addition of a new theme and gameplay aspects. Each game is related by story, and because the first two aren't particularly time-consuming, you can get through them rather quickly. I would honestly recommend playing them in chronological order so that you don't get the impression that the first ones are less important because you already completed the third one, which just feels better in every way. Catquest is not a time-consuming series. It is designed to be short but can also be a slightly longer experience with challenging content if you do want to step outside the main story to explore and to do a lot of these large open areas with tons of secrets in addition to the many treasures that you can find. Personally, I like them all for different reasons, but Catquest 3 was far more immersive in the sense that I felt motivated to continue exploring the game before taking on the final boss because everything was created and polished to a much higher standard than the first two games, especially with being able to load up co-op, for a much greater experience. Considering the games are normally on a massive sale, you can get all 3 games for the low price of $15, which offers you more than 30 hours of gameplay, so if you're looking for some exciting and casual cat questing adventures, you should definitely pick this up when you have the chance.